Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about Donald Trump and about the extraordinary cult that seems to have built up around him. These millions and millions of people who seem to believe every single word he ever utters, and seem to still believe that he is the one and only person who can make America great again, despite the fact that he's already had one shot at it and didn't really succeed. I think it seems right now that there's every possibility that he's going to be the next president, because Biden apparently is still saying that he's going to continue, and it doesn't seem really possible that he can win, given the fact that he is these days so doddery. He's criticised a lot for being incoherent when he's speaking, but you don't have to listen to many of Trump's speeches to realise that Trump is every bit as incoherent. Now, the week started with this the shooting, the rather mysterious shooting, where apparently Trump's ear was grazed by a bullet. He only missed death because of, according to many of his supporters who've been interviewed on the television, because of divine intervention, because obviously God couldn't lose such a great hero as Trump. No explanation as to why God didn't intervene to stop the other guy being shot dead, but there it is anyway. And he was saved and was able to go on to the convention wearing an enormous sanitary towel over his ear. And I think one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen is all those people attending the convention who were wearing bandages over their right ears. A sign of just blind devotion to Trump. And what is so extraordinary about all these people is how they can, in their own minds, somehow ignore Trump's history, Trump's past. I mean, if you look at his record. I mean, he, as a businessman, he's famous for having been a questionable person to do business with. No end of people claim they're owed money and that he hasn't paid them and so on. I think he's been involved in all sorts of dodgy deals over the years. But even as president, he was impeached twice, and no other president had ever been impeached twice. He absolutely refused to accept the result of the election, despite the fact it was very obvious that he'd lost the election. He refused to attend Biden's inauguration. He paid off Stormy Daniels, went to court for that. He was found guilty of 34 different counts, and for that he's going to be sentenced in September. One of many court cases he faces. He took a whole load of confidential state documents to Mar-a-Lago. Nobody knows quite why. Was he going to pass them on to the Russians? Who knows? What was he doing as a former president with loads of state documents? And we saw the photographs of his little bathroom absolutely full to the roof with all these countless files. He lost a civil case in New York concerning his business and how he was found guilty of inflating his asset values in order to raise money and so on. For that, he was fined, or his company was fined $350 million plus interest and so on. It all came to about $450 million plus God knows how much in legal fees. And he and his sons were banned from running any business in New York for 3 years. He was found guilty of raping Jean Carroll, a lady who subsequently received damages of $88 million. And all this is just overlooked by his supporters. And when he lies and lies and lies, they believe it all. Do you know, after he stood down last time after being president, the Washington Post and various others went through all of his speeches throughout the 4 years he'd been president, and they found that he had given false statements or blatantly lied on 30,500 times. You know, every time this man opens his mouth, even when he gave his acceptance speech the other day at Milwaukee, the fact checkers afterwards found 22 lies in his acceptance speech. And he just says whatever he thinks people want to hear, knowing that these people will all believe him and support him. And there's the business with Russia. Nobody knows quite what his relationship is with Putin and the Russians, but we all remember when he was in Helsinki for a meeting with Putin, and a journalist asked him, when they were giving a press conference, he and Putin afterwards asked him if he thought that the Russians had been involved in interfering in the election, in his election, as had been claimed, and by the Secret Service. And Trump's response was that he'd asked Putin if they had interfered in his election, and Putin had said no, they hadn't. And he said that he saw no reason to disbelieve Putin. In other words, he was publicly stating in front of everyone how he believed Putin and not his own Secret Service, in terms of whether or not there was interference in the election. And the worrying thing about all this is that this man who's a compulsive liar, this man who's a narcissist, this man who's thoroughly dishonest, is going to be leader of the free world. And it's a frightening thought. And I think it's not just him. I think, we have, for example, in this country, people until maybe the turn of the century, people voted tribally. You were either a Labour voter or you're a Conservative voter, and you generally, except when exceptional circumstances, you generally voted for the people you always voted for, because you were voting for a party for certain sort of basic principles. But when you have people who have these enormous personalities, this enormous charisma, and we have the same here. We have Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. People seem to be able to forget everything and just latch on to these simple slogans that these people repeat and repeat and repeat with such assurance and such confidence that people follow them. This is no way to elect governments, following charismatic charlatans. And it really is dangerous, and I think quite worrying. Now, on the subject of questionable leaders who attract huge audiences, huge followings, Nigel Farage was at in Milwaukee. Now, he was elected as a member of Parliament for Clacton just over 2 weeks ago. And again, I mean, he gave a speech after, just before he was elected, saying about how he was going to work so hard for the people of Clacton, and in his acceptance speech afterwards, or his victory speech, he said he was going to spend so much time looking after the voters of Clacton and his constituents and so on. Anyway, he was in Milwaukee, and he was interviewed by lots of people. He seemed to be wandering around being interviewed, but anyway, one of them was Emily Mindless, who asked him why he was there, and he said he'd come to support his friend, and I think this friendship's one-sided, actually. I suspect that Trump barely knows who Farage is. But anyway, he was rather sarcastic to Emily Mindless. He said, well, I've got friends, and maybe you haven't got any friends. Anyway, it turns out afterwards, it was reported yesterday that Trump didn't even have time to see him. So he went all the way off. And, it's just Liz Truss was the other person. They're wandering around in a Republican red dress and looking absolutely as pathetic as ever. The woman is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. The most unsuccessful prime minister ever, a woman who lost a 26,000 majority just 2 weeks ago, is wandering around the Republican conference trying to be recognised and trying to be relevant. The woman is quite extraordinary. And the other person who was there was Boris Johnson. Now, Boris Johnson, as we know, a few years ago could command hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single speech. Well, there's a picture of him in a meeting where there are a few hundred chairs and about 30 people. The man is finished. But as I say, both Farage and Johnson are very much like Trump. They're people who attract followings, regardless of what they say, regardless of how dishonest or how corrupt what they have to say is. They attract these huge followings simply because they're so confident in everything they say, because they're such good speakers, such good performers, and because these sort of people are so much liked by the media. The television love people who are good at an interview, and who doesn't want to watch or didn't want to watch Johnson at his prime, because he was always witty and always interesting. He might talk a lot of dishonest nonsense, but he was always worth a listen. And likewise with Farage, because he's so confident, he's so certain, and like Trump, he knows what's wrong and he knows what's right and he knows who's responsible. It's always somebody else. He's never got any answers, but everybody else is responsible, and it's all so simple. And as I say, the media pick on that. They like to show these people. They like to keep promoting them because they're more interesting than dull backbenchers when they want someone to interview. There was an interesting thing during the state opening of Parliament last week concerning Farage. And what happens is, what's happened in the past, they have someone who commentates throughout, and previously it's been Hugh Edwards, and before that it was David Dimbleby. And they're sat in a room and they have 3 or 4 experts who they'll talk to during when all the pantomime's going on of the state opening. And this year they used Nana Manchetti. She's a sort of rather lightweight, I would say. She presents the One Show, I believe, or some such nonsense. Anyway, she was absolutely hopeless, and obviously they printed out an A4 sheet and said, look, this is what's happening, and you just mention this and mention that and whatever. But at one stage, the MPs, 650 of them, were all walking back from the Lords back to the Commons in a procession, and this was being filmed whilst Nana Manchetti was asking one of her guests a question, and the guest was answering the question, and midway through his answer, she interrupted to say, "Oh look, there's Nigel Farage and Richard Tice." And you think, out of 650 MPs, she's chosen 2 who are well known and who are forever on the television because they're good box office. And you can see how it's very likely the BBC will go on promoting particularly Farage because he's good box office. He's the guy who was on Question Time more than anybody else in history apart from Paddy Ashdown. He's on 26 times. What an opportunity that was to promote all his whichever party he was heading at the time. And you can see how in the future it's going to be when there's any political debate or question being discussed. There's going to be the Labour Party for the government, and then for the other side it'll be maybe the Conservatives or maybe the Liberals or maybe the Reform Party with their 5 MPs. And again, it's, as I was saying with Trump, it's this cult of personality. You get these big personalities who get so much more publicity than they should get. And Johnson was another absolute classic, somebody who, as I said before, was very witty, very charming, very entertaining, and very, very, very popular. And it's no way to choose prime ministers, and I'm not sure what anybody can do about it really. But I think in the past until now, and indeed again now, we have prime ministers who are not particularly, such as Keir Starmer, not particularly charismatic, and I think people are more likely to look at what his policies are rather than looking at whether or not he's fun to watch on the television. But anyway, as I say, I think it's worrying when personality takes over, and when people are voting for personalities. It's really, really bad for democracy. It's said the big flaw with democracy is that people get to vote, but there it is. That's the system we have to live with, and I think we just have to hope that we don't come across too many more big egos in future. Anyway, that's what I think about it. And if you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed. And until next time, thank you again, and bye for now.